everybody. Thanks for coming and joining us today to have this really amazing conversation. I'm thrilled to be here. My name is Tara Aquilante, and I am a wellness and abilities specialist here at the College in Human Resources. My role is to help employees with managing their absences and managing accommodations. And with a background in counseling myself, I've always been passionate about mental health and wellness, and I'm thrilled to be here today to host this fireside chat without the fire with Nora. Pretend it's there. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome our very special guest, Nora Elmi. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Nora, and then she's going to tell us a little bit about herself. She is an Algonquin College alumni, registered social worker, and licensed therapist in the province of Ontario. She has over a decade of experience working for numerous nonprofit community organizations. Nora utilizes her education as well as her professional and personal experience to educate and empower individuals. Through her private practice, Elmi Counseling and Wellness Services, she provides individual therapy to support clients around issues including anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, life transitions, relational conflicts, as well as other concerns. But more than a therapist, Nora is an accomplished public speaker, which we're going to see in a few minutes, and a workshop facilitator and wellness curator. She's very passionate about serving the BIPOC community and empowering women to live a life rooted in wellness. So please give a warm welcome to Nora.
So imagine I walked on stage and sat down because I didn't do that.
We're just imagining that. So Nora, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, well, thank you so much for that warm welcome, and thank you, Lauren, for having me, and thank you guys all for taking the time to be here with me today. I really appreciate it. I'm not really a mic person because my voice does project, so if I'm too loud or you can't hear me, just let me know, and I'll hopefully to make those changes. So as you mentioned, so my name is Nora Elmi. I am a mom to a wonderful toddler and one on the way, hence the no walking right now. I'm about 6 months right now. I am a wife. My husband's back there enjoying the wonderful cookies. I am also a daughter, a sister, and a friend. I'm a registered social worker here in Ontario. Also, I'm a licensed therapist, and I just really enjoy working with community. So a little bit about my background. I grew up in a single parent home with a single mother, and I have 3 sisters, and we grew up in what is known now as a priority neighborhood. Back in my time, it was called a low-income neighborhood, and some even call it the hood, right? That's just where I grew up. That's my environment. That's just my reality. And it was beautifully chaotic, right? I had a lot of experiences that I remember that were absolutely amazing, that are enriched, that I will keep with me forever. And I also had some experiences that weren't so good. But through that kind of life experience, what ended up happening is I just became really passionate about community, really passionate about serving community members and supporting them. And so I feel like I was naturally drawn to the field of social work. I didn't know it at the time, okay? I did not know it at the time. It was just something I was doing. And then throughout the years, I started working with youth. I really enjoyed working with youth. So I did a lot of community work, supporting youth with education, with lifestyles and life skills programming, supporting them through employment training, and just anywhere I can get my mentorship hat on for youth, I was there. And then over the last couple of years, I transitioned into working with not just the youth themselves, but families. And I think that's a direction that even the government was going in, where we can't really support young people if we're not connected to their families, if we can't, be able to provide them the resources and the support that they need as a system. So I did that for some time. And then right now in the space that I'm in, I've been the happiest I've ever been in my life right now. I operate a full-time private practice, Elmi Counseling and Wellness, where I get to do all the things that I love to do, but on my own time, and with the populations and the demographics I enjoy working with. So in addition to being a mom now, I also work full-time private practice. I have some wonderful therapists who are also, one joined already and one is joining the team as well. So as I transition for my leave, that will also be something that can get carried on. Like you said, I love doing public speaking and just educating folks about mental health and well-being, especially students, because I identify with being a student for way too long, and I know the stresses that come with being a student, so I really enjoy working with students. And the part about wellness curator just means that I love creating content, creating events, creating spaces of wellness that people can come together. And so that's me in a nutshell, and hopefully we'll talk more about that today.
Perfect. Thanks, Nora. And we hear that you're a proud alumna of Algonquin College. Can you talk a little bit about your experience of being a student here?
I don't know how much time we have for this question, but...
She loves Algonquin College, just so you're aware.
This is not paid, okay? This is not a sponsorship. This is real life, guys. So, Algonquin, first of all, it changed a lot because I was so confident, like, with the parking, and I was like, yeah, I know where we're going. We definitely did a whole loop around the buildings, and I found C. But Algonquin, for me, was the start of my self-discovery and my self-development journey. And I think to fully understand that question, I do have to take it back a little bit. So my timekeepers, let me know how we're doing for time, okay? So in high school, I was super involved. You know, I was the student co-president in my grade 12 year. I was a decent student. I was on the honor roll. I didn't have like A pluses, but I was good. You know, I had really good grades. I was super involved, right? Like I did all the sports that I thought I could do, and just was doing all the extracurricular stuff. And so I remember meeting with my guidance counselor, and we're kind of talking about the future and what I wanted to do. And she was like, you know, like we did, I don't know what those things are called anymore, but like career cruising tests and like aptitude tests, and it always came up like, you're really sociable, you know, you love helping people, you should consider social work. Again, it wasn't clicking for me at the time, and I was like, no, listen, I come from like an immigrant family. I'm second generation immigrant. I only have a couple options. It was either doctor, lawyer, engineer, nursing. Accounting was on the come up at the time, okay? So those were the things that were kind of on my radar that I only knew about, and because I love working with youth, I said, okay, I got it. I figured it out, guys. I'm going to become a pediatrician. Because I could be a doctor that works with children and youth, and that's how I put it together at that young age, right? So I go off to university, and in my first year at university, I did completely horrible. I failed almost all of my classes, not all, but most, and I really wanted to give up. I wanted to quit. It just wasn't an environment that I flourished in. I wasn't involved. I didn't even know anybody on campus. I didn't know where my classes were. And all I kept telling myself was like, I don't know what I can do, but I just can't be here. It just didn't feel right for me. And so that's when the social work stuff came back to me. I'm like, that guidance counselor said this. This mentor said this. This person said this. Let's look into it. Boom, go online. I find the Algonquin College Social Service Program, the Social Service Worker Program. I enrolled in the program. And I went above and beyond. I also, as soon as I enrolled in the program, I also signed up to be a student leader at the school, okay? So imagine, I don't know the campus, I've never been here, but I signed up to be a student leader so I can meet people, and they were like, okay, great, you're gonna do the orientation. I said, how? I don't even know the campus, so they gave us the quickest like introduction to be like student orientation, and then I loved it so much. So Jessica's actually in the room there, back there with the pink hair. She's awesome. She was part of my journey when I was here, and then I started working at the school, and it transformed my experience. Like I loved Algonquin. I was here day and night. I used all the amenities. Like I got my money's worth. Okay. But other than the internal experience I was having at the college, I didn't know at the time as well, but you get a lot of hands-on training, right? Like, how many of you here are students right now? Yeah, okay, and so students and faculty, right? Like, what you do know is that, like, Algonquin gives out a lot of hands-on training, and from that training, I built confidence, I built connections, I was able to network. I got into the field before I even, like, finished college, okay? Then I go off to university, and I actually had more experience than most of my peers, because of the hands-on experience. And so I'm like Team Algonquin. I'm like, what do you need me to do? I'm here. Like, I love it so much. So thank you guys, you know, for the staff that's here that creates this environment, for the faculty. And if you're a student here, listen, it's good, okay? It's really, really good.
Especially the new rec center, yeah.
Listen, I drove by, I'm like, is that all glass? like, what? This is how they work out. I'm like, you gotta go, Nora, stay focused. Like, you started at 12, but I'm definitely gonna go check out that new building back there, because when I was here, it stopped at their student residence or the student commons. So I'm definitely gonna explore. It looks amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's awesome, and it just reinforces what all the students are saying, right? So that's amazing.
I hope so. That's awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit, you mentioned you're in private practice. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about to start in a private practice?
Yes. So nothing in my life has been like clear cut. Like, I don't know if a lot of people can resonate with this. Like, I think when you're young, you have this idea that like, oh, I know what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do this, and my life is going to become this, but that just wasn't my experience. So at the time when I was working for the community, I did see people in private practice, but I didn't know much about it. But the reality is I continued my education for a really important reason. And one of those reasons is because working frontline and working in community, I work a lot with marginalized communities, right? With people who look like myself, who have certain experiences, and sometimes the people in power did not look like me, or they did not have similar experiences as I did, but the reality is they have education, and they had higher education, and this kind of speaks to like the systemic stuff that happens and how some folks have access to education and others don't. So that was like my driving force. I was like, I need to get this master's so I can be in position of impact, so I can not just create change from like a frontline perspective, but like also have change in a way that like I can change policy and have that bigger impact. And so that's kind of what really propelled me to do the master's. And the private practice actually is interesting. It came from struggle. It came from a crunch. So in the height of COVID, I was pregnant, and I was due to have a baby in May. And the pandemic really got us. My partner ended up losing his job. I'm on like maternity leave. Like, if anyone knows what that is, it's very different from a regular salary job. And so it was a really tough time. And so what we ended up doing is we like packed up our stuff. Like, I feel like it was overnight. He says we had 3 weeks, same thing. We packed up our stuff and we ended up coming to Ottawa. So we actually grew up here. Both of our families are here. It just made sense at the time. And then when we came here, when my son was about a year old, I started like really feeling anxious. I said, I love being at home with him, and I don't necessarily want to go back to the working field or the force, because it was so unpredictable, right? So I would literally like feed him at night, put him down, go on the computer. I'm like, how to start a private practice, how to start a business, how to be able to work from home. Like, I was Googling everything. And I did start working full time at a job, which was amazing, and I got to do some remote work. But at the same time, it was like the alignment was everything. I joined a mentorship program that was offered through the Black Therapist Collective. And it was this opportunity where like Black therapists in Ontario who are looking to, look at this, like this is wild when I came across it. It said, Black therapists in Ontario who are looking to start or grow a private practice who need mentorship. If this is you, register. I registered so quickly. Like, I was like, the algorithm is listening to me, because it came up on Instagram. That's what happened. I registered. Yeah, it was an amazing program, and they definitely like helped me start the practice. And till this day, like, we're an amazing group, like a collective. We do peer support. We support each other. We build on each other's practices, and that's kind of how it came about. So it was like a really difficult time, but I think most mothers can also attest to this, that like when you have a child, you're like, I'm gonna do anything and everything to be able to create a life for you that like, I'm proud of and that you'll be proud of. So that's kind of how that happened.
Yeah, out of struggle comes success, right?
Absolutely.
So that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Just want to turn our conversation a little bit to something that's on a lot of people's mind these days, especially students. I want to talk a little bit about what is stress and why do people respond differently to stress?
Yeah, so stress. Hands up if you know stress, if you've been acquainted with stress, right? Okay, so all of us in the room, most of us in the room. So again, I love speaking with students because, again, I identify so much as being a student for most of my life, right? Like, I did college and then university, and then I did my master's, and so I know student life very well. And also now as an adult, you guys did not prepare us for this, okay? But adulting is also very hard and comes with its own stresses. So stress really is, it's a reaction to a situation and not the situation itself, right? And stress is this idea that, the demands of the thing that we are worried about is higher than our actual capacity or our response to the situation. And so when we get stressed, our body releases like adrenaline, cortisol, right? Like these hormones come in and they're like, okay, what's going on? How can we help you, right? And sometimes stress can be good, right? Stress can help us get a task done. It could help us meet, some deadlines. It could help us get out of a scary situation, right? With that adrenaline and cortisol. However, if there's too much adrenaline and too much cortisol and there's too much stress and you feel extremely overwhelmed, what ends up happening is our bodies can actually shut down, and there might be, side effects, so such as like chronic illnesses. We can have physical symptoms, emotional, cognitive. There's so many things that can happen to us because of stress. And so when I'm working with clients, I like to be really clear, and I don't like to use jargon. And so something I express to my clients is, imagine when you're stressed that there's an alarm going off in our heads, right? If you have the skills or the capacity or even the awareness, you can go ahead and turn off that alarm and say, okay, you know what? I got it from here. Thank you very much. I got the notification. I'll take it from here, right? But when that alarm goes off and you feel like you don't have control over it, you're unable to detect the frequency, the duration, the volume of it. It gets really, really distracting. And that's kind of when people fall into having depression or anxiety or panic attacks and really feel out of control. And so that kind of goes to I think the second question you said,
why do people respond differently to stress?
Yes, okay. So we know that stress is a reaction to a situation, not the situation itself, right? For the most part. And as I was preparing to be here today, I like to do things that don't relate to speaking, right? I just like to calm down. So I was listening to a podcast before I came here today. And there was this woman who asked the doctor a really important question, I thought. And she said, if siblings are born in the same household, why are they different? If you're a parent, you definitely, wonder, why are you guys not the same? What's going on here? My oldest wasn't like this, right? And I thought his response was really interesting. And he said, children can be born into a same household, but they're not being born into the same parents. And what that means is that parents, right, as they have children, each year they're changing. You're evolving, you're growing. Your financial situation might be different. Your socioeconomic situation might be different. Your education, your environment. So essentially, even though you're coming out of the same parents, right, you are getting different versions of your parents. And so what that means is the factors and the influences around your parents informed who they are. And so stress is essentially the same for us. We all have different factors that impact our stress. This can look like age. It could look like your genetics. It could look like your environment. It could look like your roles and responsibilities in a family. It could look like, your education. All these things impact us. And so depending on how the individual person's experiencing these things, that's how they would respond to stress. So it's a learned behavior. It's from an experience that you've had before, or it's from something that you know to be true.
And also I would say, to the age point, as you get older, you've experienced more stress, right, and that impacts also how you deal with it, I would think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. One of the big buzzwords around is emotional regulation.
Yes.
So I want to talk a little bit about that. Why is emotional regulation so important, and how can we engage in it, and maybe talk a little bit about what that means?
Yes.
In case people don't know. Thanks.
Yeah, so like I said, I was a student for most of my life, and I wish I knew this back in the day when I was struggling. I wish I could call on these skills, but to be honest, I'll be completely transparent. I didn't really have a lot of emotional regulation. I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I was I have to fix it. I have to get it done. I have to make this okay, right? So I think when we think about stress, and if you can think about a situation where maybe you were recently stressed, and you probably went to a friend or your child or a peer or a colleague, and you're this thing is going on. They were okay, well, what are you going to do about it? All right? That requires an action. That requires you to be able to do something about the situation. So emotional regulation, so that's problem solving, taking practical steps towards the situation. Emotional regulation is the opposite. So emotional regulation is basically how we manage our emotions in response to a situation, because we cannot control all situations. Right? So if stress is a response, a reaction to a situation, our emotional regulation is our ability to be able to adapt or to be able to support ourselves in this time when we are responding to stress. And when I learned that, even now, it's as an adult or as a therapist, I'm just wow. it's like a sigh, like a deep, like a sigh, like not a sigh, what is it? Like a deep breath, like a relaxation, because I'm like, I can't change everything. I actually can't control everything. I don't have that power. But what we can do is control how we feel. And so emotional regulation requires techniques such as deep breathing, right? I think we all think we breathe throughout the day, but you'd be surprised how shallow our breath is sometimes, right? Yes, okay. And when someone tells you to engage in a deep breath and you do it, you're like, oh, that actually felt good. Because we're actually breathing. That helps regulate our mood. Journaling is really important as well. Meditation, prayer. I'm really big on mindfulness, right? So as now I'm an adult, I had to learn this very quickly because I'm like, if I can't change it, I gotta bring myself to the present moment. So being able to engage in mindfulness activities of just like, what are things I can see? What are things I can touch? What are things I can smell? What's going on in my current environment that can allow me to come to this present moment? And trust me, with a toddler, I feel like I cracked the code with this one because sometimes he's doing a lot of things and I'm like, okay, Nora, mindfulness, like just bring it to the present moment. And I don't make it about all the things that I'm worried about later because there's a lot I could be worried about, And so, yeah, emotional regulation is our ability to be able to manage our emotions. And something that I really love to encourage in emotional regulation is rest, okay? And especially as a Black woman, as someone who comes from an immigrant family, I think, our families are always working hard. They're always hustling. It's grind culture. We got to keep it going always, right? And so rest actually allows us to have the capacity to be able to see and think more clearly and to be able to regulate our emotions that way. And I definitely will, take all the questions later on in terms of like the how-tos, but so like a quick one for breathing could be just to take your index finger, for example, and put it at the bottom of your thumb here, and you basically inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale as you trace your fingers. And over time, you don't have to use your hand anymore because you'll be a professional at deep breathing, but that's a quick way of doing that. And in terms of your thoughts, asking yourself this quick question of like, if you're thinking something negative, you're really overwhelmed, you can say to yourself, like, is this real, first of all, right? Because if stress is like real or perceived, you say, is this real? And then if you think the answer is yes, ask yourself, I need some evidence. If you can't produce the evidence, tell yourself, I need some receipts. How do I know this is true, right? And you can basically talk yourself out of that. Obviously, it's not as easy as I'm saying that it is, but over time with your own practice and even getting support, you'll be able to kind of do that reframing and positive affirmations that will basically help you get to the present moment again, which is so important.
Children in school now are taught the emotional regulation, the yoga, the deep breathing, the mindfulness, the meditation. And then it seems to like peter off, and then we don't do it anymore.
Right.
And we're trained to do it as children, as toddlers, for the temper tantrums and stuff. And we need to carry that into our adulthood, right? I think we stop breathing.
Because we stop resting.
I know,
We just start hustling and go and like breathing. What is that?
Yeah.
I'll breathe later. I'll breathe when I go.
For that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Now, what? So yes, you've noted that you're a mom and you're currently 6 months pregnant, and you operate a full-time business, and you're a sister and a daughter and a friend and a wife. And can you tell us what you do when you feel stressed? And your spouse can corroborate that, I guess.
Listen, do not deny or confirm, okay? This is a question for me. So I am obviously a human, but I'm also a Cancer by horoscope. So apparently we're emotional humans, okay? That's what I've been told. And so I cry a lot, guys. Sorry. Like if I cry here today, I will not apologize for that. And I will blame it on the pregnancy. But in general, I do cry a lot. I feel like it's my way of being able to release things, especially when I'm working with clients who, for example, are sharing really difficult things with me. After a session, I might not be able to call somebody right away. I'll just sit there and I'll be like, that was hard, I give myself a moment to sit with it. Again, so cry about it. But I also, emotional regulation is really important for me because I realize that a lot of the things that stress me out, I actually can't change. So being able to talk to myself about it, like positive affirmations are so important to me. And I think over time I hear my friends say Nora, you're really positive, you're really happy. And I'm just like, no, I'm putting in a lot of work right now. Like, I might not even feel the things I'm saying in the moment, but I'm trying my hardest to believe it, like you're gonna be okay.
Fake
like,
it till you make it.
Fake
right?
it till you make it. Oh my, exactly. So, so setting boundaries, asking for help, asking for support, which is really hard. And I will do better, I promise. But asking for support is what I do to also manage my stress, and allowing myself to be okay when I'm not okay. And that's really
It's okay
hard.
to not be okay. We really support that here.
Wow, okay, because even when I work with my clients and I hear them say all these things, and I'm like, well, what's the issue actually, Like, why does that have to be fixed right now? Why does that have to be changed right now? Like, why can't we just sit with it and allow ourselves to feel it so that when it comes up for us next time, we know what to do with that, right? So just, again, being in the present moment is major for me.
That's awesome. Thank you. What advice do you have for current students related to these topics? Other than breathe, because that's an important one.
Yes, remember to breathe, please. It's going to be okay. For students, wow. Again, I was a student for so long, and there's just so much I wish I knew, but I'm going to tell you guys a secret, okay? I will tell you a secret. I don't think anyone tells you guys. You don't have to know what you're doing, okay? You don't have to know the end goal. And some people who are a little bit more structured, who may be, a little bit more A-type will probably challenge that, I think. But what I mean by that is I think when we think about happiness, happiness comes from growing. It doesn't come from a state. It doesn't come from a moment, it comes from literally growing. And so as students, this is what my experience was too, I wasn't happy because I always thought I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what I'm doing. Everyone around me looks so confident, they got good grades, everyone has it all figured out and I don't. With that energy, you're just robbing yourself of the present moment so much. So the reason why I'm saying you don't have to have it all figured out is because I genuinely, again, we could talk about it later if you disagree, but I feel like the goal is just to be happy, and you're happy when you're growing. So focus on evolving, focus on learning something new. Focus on being in a moment or a state that gives you joy, right? And guess what? As you evolve and grow, even as adults, even as faculty in this room, I'm sure you guys can agree to this, is that your desires change, your goals change. And so there's no one thing you have to know. For example, I never said, I was going to be a therapist. I just said, I like this field. Let's see where this goes. That's when I got my senses back, though, right? After I stopped comparing myself to people. But yeah, just follow your heart, do the things that make you happy, take it one day at a time, and you really don't know, you really don't have to know exactly where this journey is gonna end, because it's a journey. There's no destination, to be honest.
I think that really resonates with a lot of people. Did that resonate with you guys? Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Awesome. So we had a few questions submitted. One of them is, how do you know when you need the help of a specialist to manage or cope with stress and anxiety? At what point do you need some professional help?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. First, it's important to kind of take the steps, right? So have you tried to seek support from friends and family? What does your internal community system look like? What does your support system look like? I think that's the first thing I would say. If you tapped into them and you still don't feel supported, okay, then maybe that's a flag right there, right? If you are trying to manage and cope with your emotions on your own, but you're still extremely triggered and you just feel no matter what I do, I can't figure it out. When you're feeling extremely stuck, these are the times where I would encourage you actually to reach out for additional support. You don't have to do it forever. You don't have to do it always, but just reach out for additional support, because you'll be shocked at how someone else can help you kind of understand what you're going through and to help you really release some of that stuff that's allowing you to feel stuck. And so pay attention to your body, pay attention to your behavior, pay attention to the things that are triggering you, and just yourself, right? You might not even know it's triggering you, but you're I don't feel okay today. And if that's prolonged and that happens for quite some time, then you can get help. You don't have to do it alone, and you're not alone, right? I think that's really important to recognize as well. And Algonquin does have a lot of amazing services. Like I said, I took my money's worth here. So check into the wellness services here, the counseling services here, using the recreational spaces here, and just talking to staff here as well. You'll be able to get connected to the services you need as well.
Yeah, I think it's really, the stigma around that has really come down a lot, which I'm super happy about, because
Yeah.
I think it's important to be able to seek help at different points throughout your life. You might need it as a student, you might need it as a parent, you might need it as a child, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's really good advice.
And you're actually in an interesting position at the school, right? Because
Yeah.
you get to see people coming to you
Yeah.
and getting support around their wellness
Yeah.
and their mental health. So
Yeah, for
real
sure.
life example, right? Like
There
it
you
works.
go. I don't know what our time is like, but we will continue with some of the questions that we have. We're good? Yeah. Okay. So can you please explain the term gaslighting and how to respond to it in a positive way?
Woo. Social media.
We're getting into this now.
You know, the term, it's not something I was really familiar with even like growing up, but I think when you're on social media, you hear a lot of terms, and like for sure gaslighting is one of them. So I think it's important to recognize that, so gaslighting is a form of like psychological abuse, right? And it's this idea of abuser really convincing like the victim that they are not in control, that they're not trustworthy, and the person starts to really self-doubt themselves. They start to question themselves. They start to not believe in themselves, and that's kind of how this like abuser might take some power over. And so in terms of like what happens if you're experiencing gaslighting, it's really important to just take a moment and take some space, right? Because typically you don't know that you're in that situation. You just feel like, am I okay? Like, is this actually happening? Or did this person just say this about me, right? So you're being convinced that you're not right, so you're gonna second guess yourself. Take some space, right? When you take this space, try to ask yourself like what's going on. If you can't take physical space, because this is like, let's say like an abusive relationship, or like perhaps a parent or somebody who's very close in your bubble, try to do that like mental stuff, right? So the mindfulness, staying in your present moment and really creating some at least mental distance between you and this individual. Setting boundaries, right? Because whether you're being in in a situation where it's like a gaslit type of situation, setting boundaries will allow you to protect yourself in scenarios and say, you know what, regardless of what happens, this is how I'm gonna respond and react, and this is what works for me. So setting that boundary. Also, I would say like documenting. I know this sounds kind of weird, but like being able to like document somehow the things that are happening to you, whether it's writing it down, whether it's calling a friend, sending a text message, so that you can collect your own evidence of the things that are happening, so that when you are in a state where you can look back at the situation, you can like really see what's going on. So yeah, those are the things. And I think the person said, like, how would you respond? So I would say take care of yourself first. It's not about responding to the abuser, making them happy and being able to work with them. Like, take care of your safety first and recognize it if these are the things that you're going through, the symptoms or the things that I shared, that this is emotional abuse, right? And when you acknowledge it as such, then, you know, you would take it more seriously.
Yeah, toxic relationship, for
Right.
sure. Perfect.
Right.
I think now we're going to see if there's any questions in the audience. There's a mic that will be sent around, so you have Nora's undivided attention.
Woo.
Ask away.
Oh, woo.
Hopefully there's some questions. Oh.
This has been a great talk so far, really. Thank you for coming and talking to us about this. I really am curious if you're someone who is a support to somebody, or say you're a manager, you're a leader, you're even a peer, and somebody's in that state of stress that you can't snap them out of, what do you suggest are the things that I can do as a support to somebody in that moment?
Yes.
So that they can help them regulate their stress in that moment when they're reacting to something?
Yeah. That's a really good question, and if you're a support person and you're asking that, I think that's amazing, and the people that you do help are really awesome to they're lucky to have you. I think the most important thing to do when we're trying to help others is to not give advice, not tell them what to do, but to really ask, like, how do you want to be supported? Right? Sometimes a person will say, like, I don't need nothing right now. You're like, okay, well, you let me know when you need something, right?
Sometimes they need Haagen-Dazs, though, I'm just saying.
What flavor? What flavor, though? Hold on, what flavor?
All flavors.
All flavors? The almond one goes hard, I know. Yes, sometimes you do. You just need literally that. Last night I needed an Oreo McFlurry, extra fudge. That's what my coping strategy was, and it worked for me. So yeah, I would definitely start with asking them, like, how do you want to be supported? Even giving resources gently, and like not having high expectations as a supporter, because the person has to be willing to accept the support and the resources and the help that that you're giving. So I would say take a lot of the pressure off of yourself and say, you know what, I offered support. I'm here. If you need me, I'll be here for you. And just to leave those doors open. I think so much what I see is that people go like, I try to help you. I try to listen to you. I try to do all the things and you don't need my help. So you know what? This is not going to work. And they just want to like end the relationship or whatever, the support relationship, but just leave the door open. And I know that because some clients, they're like, thank you for your support. I'm good. And they leave. 6 months later, they're like, can I please come back? And you have to be okay with that if you're someone who provides support. So leave the door open. Yeah.
And I would say active listening as well, and not trying to fix. They don't need you to fix it. Often they just need to be heard and be validated, right? I think that's such an important key.
I had a client last night who was just like, I just want to be heard. I'm like, I hope I'm listening. And he's like, not you. Like, he was talking about the scenario. And I was like, oh, he's like, every time I talk to this person, I don't feel listened to. And like, I really felt that because, it's interesting. He has said a line. He's like, I'm not asking to always be right. I'm just asking to be heard. And I was like, wow, like that was deep. So exactly what you're saying.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Any other questions? You have a question? Okay. Apparently we do. So.
It's for the aesthetics, okay?
Yes, to be fancy.
You can break into song if you want to. We won't judge.
Thank you for being here and talking to us about this subject. It's very important. So my question is how to deal with negative people.
What a great question.
Yeah, and mainly how to not be affected or contagious. Not sure if that's the correct word, by that. So what I normally do, because my roommate is one, so what I normally do, I try to be as much as more than as I'm already positive.
Yeah.
And sometimes I hear, wow, you are that positive early in the morning? Because yes, I am. Because I'm trying to not be affected by the negativity. Yeah. So I don't know if that's the correct way to deal with this and what else can I do for that?
That's a really good question. Did you want to start with that? Did you want to say something? Go ahead. You're late too.
Turning the tables. Yeah, that's really tough, especially if you're a very positive person and you're around somebody who's negative. Something I've learned in my life is you can't really make a negative person not be negative. Like that comes from within and that comes from themselves, right? Mm-hmm. So protect yourself, protect your space, and you can't fix it. Just continue to be you, right? Like that's the best thing. You don't have to be overly positive, just be you and hope somewhere that has a positive impact on the person, right? So I don't know if you want to add to that, but yeah you can't really do much except to be true to yourself.
Exactly. I mean, trying to be positive all the time because someone's being negative is going to exhaust you sometimes. Maybe that's not like where you want to be. Like you want to be okay with just how you're feeling, right? I think what's really important is to not personalize what that person is doing. So oftentimes, and that's a really big, we didn't get into it today, but part of the managing our emotions is our recognizing cognitive distortions, which is thinking patterns, right? So let's say you have somebody in your space who's always negative and you're like, oh, you're always negative. I didn't even do anything today. I didn't say anything to you, why are you like this, right? So tell yourself, this is actually not about me. I know it's not about me. Try not to personalize the situation, creating some boundaries and some safety for you. So if they want to be negative on their own, that is fine. But if your negativity is impacting my day-to-day life and the way I want to live and function, set some boundaries. That doesn't work for me. Maybe you don't want to have a conversation in the morning with this person if you can, I don't know, if you avoid the situation.
Sneak out of the house.
Or just have a morning routine that works for you. But yeah, setting boundaries and not taking it personal. I think that's super important because even in a marriage, right? Sometimes if my partner's upset, I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? And I realize I'm like, actually I didn't do anything. Or this is not about me. This is about an experience that you're having. And so trying to distance yourself from that as well. It's not your fault, okay? And if it is, we could talk about that too, but I don't think it is.
Feel free to book a session.
Yes,
to explore that
counseling
further.
and wellness, taking on clients.
That's awesome. Any other questions?
Thank you. And I would like to ask you a specific question about personal things.
Okay.
As a new immigrant, we suffer from many things we saw
Yes.
and we have as a background, and come here in a quiet area, everything's quiet, live in peace. But until now, I feel this unusual situation I live. Inside me, I have a lot of struggles. Still continue. Struggle with my memory, struggle with my
Yes.
life, struggle how to learn English, struggle with how can get this course, social service worker, and continue and make a successful in this course. Struggle how to be myself in new community.
Yeah.
Always really I'm thinking and make me sometime exhausted,
Absolutely.
tired,
Absolutely.
and lose my mind in the end, really.
Right.
So I would like to ask you this question. What should I do with my struggles? Because struggles, I feel it is a part of me now. I'm two person. One person, quiet, yes, take it easy. And another person, no, fight.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here, right?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I think I heard you say that you're in the social service worker program. Is that? So proud of you. Keep going, keep going. So just to answer that question, you are not two people. You are one person, okay, that has experienced struggles. And I think the number one thing is like learning to accept that that's something that you've been through, and then you can begin the work around that, right? I think for newcomers, though, there's a lot of pressure, and even as our parents, as immigrants, there's a lot of pressure to do everything by yourself. And you don't have to. You don't have to do everything by yourself. There's a lot of support and resources out there for newcomers in terms of counseling, right? Because the things that you're talking about, you've experienced some trauma, you're perhaps experiencing maybe some PTSD around the things that you've seen, that you've heard, that you experienced, and to keep that all to yourself and then try to do the school, do the work, take care of the family, take care of back home, that is a lot of pressure for one person. So asking for support, talking to the right people, and being compassionate with yourself, which means being really nice to yourself. Sometimes you might be in class and look at your peers and say, wow, they have it all figured out. But guess what? They have not lived your life. You know? That comes with the same stress, right? Like everyone experiences stress differently, and everyone experiences life very differently. So I think when we stop comparing ourselves to people and say, you know what? Like that's something I had to do too. Say, hey, I'm not like these people. Like I didn't even get into this, but when I was doing my master's, I was working a full-time job and a part-time job. That's my reality. I don't know how I did it. I struggled so much, you know? But my reality was there's bills that have to be paid. I had to eat. I had to pay for school. I had to pay for a car. I had to get this experience. If I let go of this job, then I don't have benefits and insurance to take care of my health. So I had to push through. And when I saw my peers, it was really hard to compare myself. But I kept telling myself, we do not have the same story. We do not have the same struggle. And I'm going to overcome this if I focus on myself.
And you also don't know what their struggle is, right? Because to
Absolutely.
your point,
Yeah.
looking at you, nobody would know what that struggle is. So
Absolutely.
you have no idea what other people's
Yeah.
struggle is too.
But ask
So,
for help.
Yeah.
You can connect with myself and anyone in this room. There's so many resources available to you. Amazing counselors too that could probably support you as well in your journey. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Congratulations on being in the program, though. That's
Yes.
awesome.
So awesome.
Any other questions? No? Okay. I have another one here. Have you gone through a time where you had no energy? I felt like you have, and felt stressed and overwhelmed easily. And what did you do to overcome that challenge?
Well, I guess I told you already now, but
Another one.
Yeah, no, I'll stick with this one. So when I finished my BSW, so my undergrad, I was ready to do my master's right away. And then I made the application, I got everything all ready, and at 11:50, the night before it was due, I had this serious case of self-doubt and imposter syndrome. I told myself I couldn't do it. It was weird. I remember this day so vividly. It was nighttime, I was in my living room, and I didn't press submit on the application. I just got very scared, okay? But then I told myself, it's okay, let me just get some experience. I don't know, I convinced myself I wasn't ready. And so a few months later, I just was really focused on finding a job. And that's when the full-time, amazing, like salary, my first salary job, I was like, what? Like I don't have to put in hours, every 2 weeks, same pay. I got like benefits, you know, it was a really nice job. And then I ended up applying for this, like the second year, like the following year for my master's. So imagine I got a full-time job and now I have full-time master's. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna accept that because I'm just gonna work. And my mentors and the people in my community were like, no, remember, like this is really important to you. That's why you applied to it. And so juggling a full-time job and full-time school and what's that called? I even had a part-time job. I don't know why. That was a really stressful time in my life. And the way I gotten through that was communication. I went to my profs and I told them my reality of the things I was experiencing, and I said, hey, this is my like lived experience. I don't know what you can do for me, but like if I come up short or something like this, please just check in on me, you know? And that was the best thing I could have done. My profs and I were like, we were best friends. Like it was just a really good experience. The TAs were super understanding. I still handled things on time, but it was just that like compassion and that empathy and grace that I really appreciated. Setting boundaries with my friends and my family members who literally did not see me for like a year and a half. Like my mom was like, even till this day, she goes, "Are you out of that room finally?" You know, because I had to really create some boundaries. Again, emotional regulation was really a big part of that, and keep reminding myself of the goal, right? Like I shared earlier, why I wanted to increase my education so that I can give back to my community. So that was like my like little plaque on the wall of like keep going. And so yeah, boundaries, communication, working through the emotional regulation stuff, and just being okay.
I feel like we all need a session with you. I'm just gonna say it. Like, does everybody else feel that way? Like, we all need that session with you. That's
Call
amazing.
me, okay? I got you.
That's awesome.
Awesome, thank you.
Perfect. So that is all the time we have for questions. Thank you so much, Nora, for the great conversation. It was such a pleasure to have you join us today for October's Third Thursdays. Thanks to everybody here who joined in person. Now the event has been recorded, so you can watch it again or share with others. We had a question about that earlier, so you can share it with others. It'll be available online in the coming days. So thanks everyone again, and have a great Third Thursday.
Thank you everyone for having me.